All right, good morning, everyone. The House Committee on Higher Ed will come to order. Clerk, will you please take attendance?
Chair Lamberth.
Here.
Representative Brian.
Present.
Colzar.
Here.
Scott.
Present.
Burns. Kofia.
Here.
Hill.
Here.
McDonald.
Present.
Pies.
Present.
Vanderwall.
Present.
Paquette.
Here.
Zorn. Brock.
Present.
Desana.
Here.
Madam Chair, you have 12 members present and a quorum.
Thank you. And Representative Reingans moves to approve the minutes from the June 21st meeting without objection, so ordered. And so it's been a few months. So thank you all for being here today. We have a full house, a lot of interest in the bills that we're going to be discussing today. So thank you all for coming, for making the trip, and for taking this into consideration. We are going to be taking testimony on House Bills 4853 and 4854. So like I said, we have a number of speakers. We're going to get started with the bill sponsors. Representative Steckloff will be giving us some testimony. She's going to be talking first about prohibiting higher education institutions from discriminating against students for wearing traditional regalia. Representative, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Chair, and members of the committee for having me here today. This bill has to do with regalia, making sure that students who come from tribal or other organizations are eligible to wear the regalia. I was kind of surprised that this wasn't already in law, so a lot of you may have some questions about that. So just a basic overlook is that making sure that we cannot discriminate against regalia for graduation.
All right, thank you. Do we have any questions for the representative? All right, yes, Representative Pius.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Madam Chair. It just occurred to me, I don't know if I should ask you this, or maybe I'll wait until I hear from your supporters. Thank you.
Okay. Any other potential questions? Yes, Representative Kofia.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Rep. Steckloff, for taking up this important legislation. What have been the prohibitions historically, and is there any logic behind why that, like you said, it's surprising that whether Indigenous or Latino, whatever the tradition, that it has not been permitted. So can you give us a little background as to why it was prohibited?
Yeah, we'll have some additional speakers that come up and they can talk about the history of what's been going on. Myself, there have been many instances in my background, in my history, of being forced to take off my Star of David necklace at many events. And so when I found out that there is still legal discrimination against regalia, it was more of a heartstring issue for me. So of course I wanted to jump on this bill as quickly as possible, but we will hear testimony from many individuals that are here today about the history and the historic events that have happened that have led us to this bill.
All right, anything further for Rep. Steckloff? All right, thank you. And next, we're going to have Representative Scott speak to her bill, 4854, which permits students to wear traditional regalia and bring traditional objects into a school building.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And hello, everybody. Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I'm pleased to bring before you the committee today House Bill 4954, which allows Indigenous persons to wear traditional regalia and to bring traditional objects to school for graduation ceremonies. This bill recognizes and supports religious, historical, and ethnographical importance of both regalia and traditional objects to Indigenous people. Indigenous regalia, such as headdress and or a ceremonial mask, would be allowed at a graduation ceremony, and likewise a feather or beaded sash or cloth would be worn at ceremonies on school property. The sacred markings of tradition, success, and personal connection with ancestors are important to the rites of passage for many Indigenous students and tell the stories of survival, persistence, and generational success and growth, reflecting pride in their own identity, as well as the identity of their respective tribes. Michigan is home to 12 federally recognized tribes, with the Michigan Department of Education estimated that some 27,000 students identify as Indigenous or tribal affiliated. This bill acknowledges the importance of culture and tradition for Indigenous students and their families and tribes. So I want to thank you, and I hope that you will support House Bill 4854 to allow traditional regalia and traditional objects at school for graduation ceremonies. And I do want to add that the Michigan Department of Education does support this bill. Any questions?
Representative Bruck?
Thank you very much. I do have one question, a comment and then a question. So as an airport a number of years ago, probably about 6-7 years ago, so after 9/11, and there was a individual going through the screening process that had a ginormous nail. And he said it was around Easter time, it was for the cross, and they let him go through. To my surprise, I guess when you say traditional objects, like, I guess this wouldn't go into knives and things of that nature at the schools. I guess because it doesn't specify, but I mean, that person said a big ginormous nail was a religious object at that point. So I'm just.
I don't think that it would qualify for.
If I may, we are working with partners on the language to
Okay, Roger.
address those
Roger.
questions.
Just wanted clarification on traditional objects, but thank you for bringing this.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for the question.
Necessary. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, all right.
Representative Kofia?
Good morning, and thank you, Rep. Scott, again, for bringing this legislation forward. So I just want to make sure I'm reading over the analysis here. Is this limited to Indigenous tribal traditions of the 12 federally recognized tribe, or is it more broadly for various ethnic traditions, these bills? Do they only speak to Indigenous regalia, or is it broader?
It does only specifically speak to Indigenous regalia.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything further? Representative Vanderwall, Vice Chair Vanderwall.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for being here. I guess personally, I would like some clarification. I don't read the bills to be just traditional, and I guess what I'm saying, if you're working on some of the language, can we make sure that it covers all religious regalia?
Yeah, I'll make sure we get clarification
Thank you.
on that.
Appreciate that.
Yep. Anything further? All right. Thank you, Representative Scott.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And we have, like I said, we have quite a few folks here to speak to this. So what I'm going to ask for our speakers is if you can keep your remarks to roughly 3 minutes. And we will hold questions until the end in hopes that some of your questions might be addressed by, all of the speakers in general. So first up, we will have Nat Spur, who is the vice chair of the, and forgive me, of the Anishinaabeg Caucus of the Michigan Democratic Party, Nottawasapi Huron Band, did I say, of the MDP, Nottawasapi Huron Band of Potawatomi.
Potawatomi and Dow, Pine Creek Indian Reservation, Athens, Michigan, and Dorothea. Good morning, all of you. My name is Nat Spur. I'm the vice chair of the Michigan Anishinaabeg Caucus through the Michigan Democratic Party. Our primary objective is to lobby on behalf of and support issues such as this one at the state government level. Our goal is to be the equivalent of the National Congress, what the National Congress of American Indians does at the federal level. So lobbying on behalf of the 12 federally recognized tribes in Michigan. We've got 5 in the Upper Peninsula, 7 in the Lower Peninsula. I'm an enrolled member of the Nottawassippi Huron Band of the Potawatomi. My house is on the Pine Creek Indian Reservation, so it does reside, I do reside within on federal trust land within the state of Michigan. However, we are a sovereign tribal
Excuse me,
government.
sir. I'm sorry. Can you push the button to turn on your mic? Thank you.
Yes, I am an enrolled member of the Nottawassippi Huron Band of the Potawatomi, just so it gets my title. I'm the vice chair of the Michigan Anishinaabeg Caucus through the MDP. So our objective is to support and lobby on behalf of issues such as this one at all levels of government and support candidates and issues, ballot initiatives. So we have 12 federally recognized tribes in the state of Michigan. 5 of them are in the Upper Peninsula. 7 of them are in the Lower Peninsula, including my own. As I mentioned, my house is on the Pine Creek Indian Reservation in Athens, Michigan, so just about an hour south of here. I grew up just outside Detroit. I grew up 4 blocks outside the city of Detroit in Grosse Pointe Park, Michigan. My high school, Grosse Pointe South, had an enrollment of 1,400 students. I know this because I was a member of the cross country, track and field, and swimming teams. And the year that I entered high school in 1992, prior to my arrival in that same year, 1992, the symbol of the swim team had been the Confederate flag. So it got a lot of media attention, especially with the proximity to the city of Detroit, where Grosse Pointe South, my high school, was located. So growing up and being a student in Grosse Pointe was an interesting situation because of the media attention that issue got. I know for a fact we had 13 African American students and myself as a Native American. My mother, Laura Wesley Spur, used to testify at hearings such as this one in this committee, the Education Committee, because she was the tribal chair, tribal council member from the late 90s, the last 11 years the last 11 years of her life up until her death, her unexpected early passing on in 2010. She used to testify before this committee on issues such as this. So we, growing up in Grosse Pointe was an interesting situation, being, one of 14 minority students in an enrollment of approximately 1,400 students. There are a lot of misconceptions and just flat out falsehoods that exist at all levels of education throughout the state of Michigan. I went to college and business school in upstate New York, University of Rochester, where I began school in 1996. I returned to Michigan in 2007, at which point I did coach the distance runners at the track and field team at my high school, Grosse Pointe South, from 2010 to 2012. So I have a lot of experience growing up and being involved with students in Michigan who live in segregated or go to school in segregated districts, such as the one where my mother was a graduate of Athens High School, which is where I now live. I didn't live on the Pine Creek Reservation until 2016, when my grandmother, who was in the final stages of her life, I became her guardian and walked her through her final months of life. At that point, I became a resident of the Pine Creek Reservation. But there are a lot of falsehoods and misconceptions that exist out there that make life very difficult on American Indian students in predominantly white school districts. And I want to thank Representative Sekloff and Representative Scott for bringing these bills forward and bringing this to the table. One thing is, both as a high school student and prior to that and as an adult, there are falsehoods out there like Indians don't pay taxes, Indians go to school for free, which are simply untrue. The Michigan Indian tuition waiver does make it possible for Native American students who are 25% blood or more to go to school for college free of tuition here in Michigan, but that's not because of a racial relationship. It's because of a government-to-government relationship that exists between the state of Michigan, the federal governments, and individual sovereign tribal nations. We all signed treaties, all 12 federally recognized tribes, and that's the reason we are federally recognized tribes. We signed treaties with the United States, the federal government, and that's why the Michigan Indian tuition waiver exists. The idea that we don't pay taxes is simply completely untrue. It's just a lie. And
Sorry, we do have I don't mean to interrupt,
yeah.
but we do have a number of speakers, so
Yes.
can I have you?
Yes.
If you can.
But anyway, the point is this bill would make non-native students more aware of our culture, of our traditions. It would also, I think, make life easier for American Indian students at all levels of school. It would make us more visible. It would basically facilitate the relationship between American Indian and non-American Indian students for a more positive, successful learning experience for these students. So, I am the vice chair of the Michigan Anishinaabe Caucus. I want to thank this committee and those representatives, specifically Representative Regnans as well, for bringing this issue to the floor. The last point I want to make is I'm a member of the Nottawassippi Huron Band of the Potawatomi, and historically, one thing about our tribes is my mother, who I already mentioned, was the female leader of our tribe for the last 11 years of her life. We had female leaders historically for thousands of years, which made us different than other cultures in the world. It wasn't uncommon for a chief to be a female, even if you went back hundreds or thousands of years. So I believe all the other people testifying on behalf of these bills and this issue are female, and they're well respected female leaders. Kwe is the Native American word for that, the Bodwe-Wadami word in our language for a female, a respected leader, in some cases elder. So I do want to make that point that this is something all the other speakers are going to be female. And Chimagwich in my language means many thanks to all of you for entertaining this issue, and hopefully these bills can pass and become signed into law by the governor.
And Chimagwich, for your testimony today. Thank you so much. Next up, we have, and again, please, if we can keep, I don't want to have to put a timer on, but we do need to make sure we get everybody in today. So we will now have Nicole Biber. All right. She is the treasurer of the Anishinaabe Caucus with the party as well, and a member of a citizen of the Little Traverse Bay Band, Ottawa.
Minugishagat, Nicole Kiwe Biber, Indigenakas, Wabananong the Taogo, Waganakasino de Waganakasino Nishinabekwe, Mishikidode. So these bills, when I heard about them and was very excited that they made it to committee, and I certainly encourage and look forward to them speedily making their way forward to be signed into law. It very much stood out to me that the educational setting and having those markers of identity have a really sometimes tumultuous history for us and implications. I purposely wore this orange shawl today. That's how we recognize, the color we used to recognize the boarding school era and those survivors. My parents met at Holy Childhood of Jesus Indian Boarding School up in Harbor Springs when they were just children. And that was on the early 1950s, and that school actually didn't have its last students leave until 1983. That era, one of the primary markers and damages that are ongoing is it was very purposeful that there would be a severance from culture. And that absolutely included how we would present ourselves, just everyday dress, how we'd recognize important times in life, how we would show this is a ceremonial, sacred space. And that's the teachings between generations, is every day and it is sacred. Knowing that my parents would, for example, my father, he was not able to have his hair long. Both of them had their families first language speakers, but they did not speak it to them as children, with the worry that someday you might end up at these schools and you'll be punished. So once they were out from there, it was lifelong for them to bring back those things into their lives. And to not have it seem like the last thing you would do at a school is show who you really were. And for these bills to say that is welcome, that is important, it's a really powerful and meaning aspect, I think, of our healing and of the need for our communities to really work through what the boarding school era meant to us and still does. So looking very much forward to having these be the positive and respectful new era for these relationships between our people and the educational system. Miigwech.
And thank you so much for sharing that piece of history with us in this context. Next up, we have, let me see, Roviata Lewis, a tribal citizen of San Carlos Apache and a parent of Roviata. Am I saying that incorrectly? I don't know. Is she on Zoom? Roviata? Am I saying the name correctly? Does somebody know? Vice Chair, do you know? Oh, okay. All right. Okay. So next we will have Mary Lee. Is Mary with us today? And Mary is joining us as a boarding school survivor. And I see she's dressed in orange as well. And when you're ready.
Honey, Minokisho. Hello and good morning. My name is Mary Lee. I'm a member of the Little River Band of Ottawa Indians in Manistee, one of the 12 federally recognized tribes here in Michigan. And this is really heart-touching for me because I'm very proud to be here and representing my people, my kids. I never had that chance to have this for me from being in boarding school in Holy Childhood in Harbor Springs, and this really touches my heart. And I'm very proud to be here. This means a lot to me and my kids to watch them graduate in their regalia and the beadwork that I make for them and for everybody else. It's an honor. It's an honor for these kids to learn their culture and what was lost for us, what I didn't get to have. And I think it would be really good for our children and to carry on what we couldn't have. It's very hard to open up being survivor of boarding school. Close up and don't want to speak, but now, all this is coming out. I want to speak up, not only for me and my kids, but for every Native, because it needs to be heard and told the truth. And they need these things because it means a lot to us. It's an honor to receive these gifts and to wear these regalias and their beadwork. It means a lot, like you wearing the suits and your dresses, pretty dresses and everything. It means a lot and it makes us proud. And they need to carry that on. And I just want to say Chimiquech for everything. Thank you very much.
And thank you, and thank you for your courage in coming here today to speak with us about this and sharing a little bit about your story. Next, we have Ramona Henry.
Hello, Buju, Anawishi, and Dishnakaz, Mashike, and Dodom, Lansing, Michigan, and Donjaba, Anishinaabe, Kwe, and Dow. I'm a little emotional from Miss Mary. I'd like to let you guys know that although we have 12 tribes here, right here in Lansing, we have almost 400 students that identify as Native American, and they are from tribes all over the U.S. and Canada. That's just right here in Lansing. And the eagle feather is a universal symbol for all tribes. It's the highest honor anybody can get. So it means a lot to all tribes, not just the 12 here. It's for all of us. And like I said, it's the highest honor you can get. You can get it as a child for something that, you do great, speaking for your people, any little accomplishment. That's something important that we do as a people. Your kid comes home with their spelling test. You give them a little reward. I just want to let you know that there's more than 12 tribes here, and we need to honor that. Up until, I think, 1970, I wouldn't have been able to wear this. This was outlawed. I wouldn't have been able to come in here and speak as a Native person on our religion, and that was only in the 70s. That's it.
Thank you. And our next speaker is joining us via Zoom, I believe, Holly T. Bird, who is an attorney. Are you with us, Holly?
I am. Thank you so much. I'm sorry, I'm pulling over and I apologize. I'm making my way to another important meeting today. I'm Shaskawasakwe and Dishnakaz, Nimki and Dodom, Traverse City and Donjaba, Parepacha, San Felipe, Pueblo, Inde, Apache, and Yaqui in Donjaba. So I'm Holly Bird. I'm an attorney. I'm a school board member up in Traverse City, TCAPS area. And I also do work with Indigenous people as an attorney on a regular basis. I live up in the Grand Traverse Band of Ottawa and Chippewa Indians community. And I spoke to you in the language first because I want to uplift and honor the Anishinaabe people of this community and of this area. I want to note that despite our public schools having very robust foreign language programs, you'll rarely find any that have Anishinaabe-Moan as an elective for children to use. And seeing that that's the original language here, I like to try to uplift it. It's a beautiful language, and it also helps children build healthy synapses in their brains for language development. So, but bringing that up, I wanted to mention the fact that this bill is here and that we're bringing it forward as a way of coming back from the erasure of the culture in Michigan. It started first with the erasure of the language, and we still see that in our public schools, where a lot of our children don't speak the language. where those offerings are not given as electives in the majority of Michigan schools. And since that's been the language here for thousands of years, it kind of begs the question as to why. The second part of that is the acknowledgement of the boarding school legacy, which was part of that erasure, where kids were forcibly taken to schools, had their culture taken from them, and weren't allowed to speak their language, had to wear the Western uniform, and in fact, as we know, and probably some of you are aware, that many children died. And that wasn't that long ago. The last boarding schools closed, 30 years ago. So these are in our lifetime. And the abuses that occurred in those schools were in our lifetime. So you heard earlier from some of the survivors of those schools and how hard it was to bring their voices forward, because it is very difficult and there's a lot of fear still based on trauma. Where schools are not allowing regalia or Native children to wear the regalia as part of their graduation or other ceremonies, it's more of that erasure. I'd like to point out that the traditional graduation outfit that kids wear in school for graduation is not a Native American idea of an honorable outfit. It is purely a Western and U.S. idea of what that outfit should look like. So again, we're telling Native students that are graduating, not only do you have to follow our rules within the school system, but you're not allowed to express yourself in the way that is honorable for you. And so I think that's something that is an oppression. It's a continued oppression and erasure of the culture of our people, when we want to celebrate these hard-earned accomplishments, and making no mistake that we are still on the demographic of people who are struggling to graduate. Our numbers are still very low in comparison to other populations, and that's something that we're continuing to struggle with, and we want to uplift our kids in the best way possible when they do graduate. And part of the way that we can do that is either regalia or beaded cap or a beaded feather, something that they can wear when they graduate. And every single child I've ever known that's been able to wear those has been so proud, has been so excited to show off and display who they are and what it means to them. And I think it's also worth saying that the culture is intermixed and intermingled with the spiritual and religious aspect of who we are, of who the Anishinaabeg people are in this area. I know someone had mentioned wearing feather as part of that, and that is definitely a spiritual and cultural part of it, and very hard one. As was mentioned before, some of us were not able to practice our religion until the 70s, and actually in practical effect until the 80s. So it's very important to us to be able to express that and to be able to do that in a way that shows who we are, particularly as we're standing on our own homelands. It feels very hypocritical to me that children who are from this place and whose families historically have been here for thousands of years aren't able to do that currently. Now, I'd like to share the experience with you that as a school board member, this issue came up for us in Grand Traverse area public schools. And I'm speaking for myself as an individual, not as for the whole school board. But we did extensive research on it. We found that there were lawsuits out there regarding First Amendment freedoms of expression, freedom of religion, and most of those lawsuits were in favor of allowing children to wear their regalia. So we ended up approving, it was a more defined aspect of it, but we approved allowing children to wear beaded caps. We approved the use of an eagle feather, and we're also possibly approving some more regalia. And on top of that, we opened it up for other people who to wear cultural or spiritual aspects of themselves with few restrictions. And I can tell you that there was a lot of fear going into it on behalf of some people about disruption or children that would take advantage of that. And that just really never came to fruition. It was fine. The beaded caps were absolutely beautiful. The children who did wear things that weren't native did so in a respectful and tasteful way for the most part. So I would ask you to sincerely think about, in particular, the fact that as we're all part of this system, whether it's the school system or the legislature or a committee, that we not continue the ongoing oppression and erasure of Native people and their culture by saying, you can't wear something to honor yourself at these in your own expression at a graduation ceremony or at a particular school-based ceremony. I think that to do so is to continue that oppression and the legacy of genocide that the U.S. has with Indigenous people. Instead, let's move forward and do this in a good way and uplift and honor those cultures that took care of this land for time immemorial and that we continue to work with and learn from every day. So thank you, miigwech naitra.
Thank you, Julie. And we have just a couple more speakers that are here with us. So let me see. Next up is Linda. Is it Cuppet Kilborn? Oh, I'm sorry. That was Holly. We have another speaker. Skipped a line here. Julie Dye is also with us on Zoom. Julie, are you here? All right. Thank you, Julie. Julie is the Anishinaabeg Caucus Secretary and a Pokagon Band Potawatomi elder. You can go ahead, Julie.
Can you hear me?
Just a minute. Yeah, 1 minute. Okay, try again.
Can you hear me?
Yep, that's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, I'll try to situate myself here. Bojojaya Kinwa, Julie Dye, Indigenicus, Michike Oandodem, Bodwe Wadmiendao, Ogegan Iniak, and Douglas. I reside in Dowagiac, Michigan. My name is Julie Dye. Dowagiac is where the Pokagon Band of Potawatomi Indians is based and serves over 6,000 citizens. Every year, or as in this year, multiple school districts will deny Native American students their freedom of religious expression by prohibiting them from wearing sacred items of traditional regalia to school baccalaureate ceremonies due to their dress codes. This violates both their religious freedom and their civil rights. These regalia items are blessed and conveyed to individuals in sacred ceremony to honor significant life accomplishments, such as educational milestones. Eagle feathers are spiritually significant in our Native communities. Eagles have a special connection to the Creator. They soar the highest, they carry our prayers. Their feathers represent courage, wisdom, honesty, and freedom. In June, every year, a higher level of education has to occur with school officials. Once schools are completely understand the religious, cultural, and academic significance, most will make accommodations, some will not, and will persist in restricting Native religious liberty and viewpoints. Our federal government has long considered eagle feathers religious objects. In 1994, the White House issued a policy concerning the distribution of eagle feathers for Native American religious purposes. Our families want to honor and celebrate student achievements because their accomplishments honor the communities of the tribes. Kachimi-gwach for this opportunity to address this problem that HB 4853 and 4854 will remedy. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Okay, now we have two more. So we'll hear next from is Linda Caput Kilborn with the Zaawanang Nimki Kwe. Did I get that right?
Close.
Okay.
My English name is Linda Cyprit Kilburn. I'm going to introduce myself in a traditional way in which my elders taught me. Bonjour, Aninishna, Ajawana Nemkikwe, Dishes Nakas, Shikandotum, Forks of the Kalamazoo River in Donjaba. Anishinaabe Osage Cherokee Heritage. What I said is my name is Southern Thunder Woman. I'm Turtle Clan, and I reside in the Albion Marshall area. I'm here today to support the two bills and stand firmly that this will be a good thing for our children. I come from a large extended family. We have many, many grandchildren and children due to our extended family. And I just want to say that, you know, when I graduated a long time ago, we were even dictated at that time on what we could wear underneath our gowns. I can remember boys couldn't wear shorts, they had to wear slacks, you know, no sandals, you know, girls had nylons and all that kind of stuff. So I know things have kind of come a long ways, but for indigenous, you know, Native American students, it really hasn't, because my grandchildren, even today, cannot go through graduation with their caps beaded, or to wear the eagle feather they received from the family, you know, for that great accomplishment. Because a lot of us didn't graduate. You know, my grandparents didn't graduate. My mother didn't graduate. So that's a big accomplishment. You know, that's an honor for them and also the family. So it's proud to see them up there going through this ceremony to receive that diploma, to move on with their lives. I'd like to just speak about a couple of incidences. My granddaughter, Wabanong, that was her name given to her, and that was what she was always called by at our house. And I can remember when she was little one day, elementary school, and she came home and she said, "Grandma, you can't call me Wabanong anymore." And I looked at her and I said, "Well, why not?" She says, "Because I get ridiculed at school for it." One of the students had heard me call her that. She was very active in sports even at that time, and so they made fun of her. She didn't want to be an Indian from that day forward, as she put it. And so I had to sit her down and explain to her, you know, that she needed to be proud. And our children are proud. They know where they come from. They stand solid. They'll even speak up during Columbus Day, you know. So they know who they are. She graduated from Western Michigan University, and I was very proud of her. But still, she could not wear any of her personal regalia. We couldn't beat her cap. She couldn't wear eagle feather, even in this day and age. Back in the late 90s, early 2000s, our daughter was going to Marshall High School at the time, and during that time we were up against the Redskin issue, and she graduated. She was ridiculed because she wore the red streak in her hair. And a lot of things happened to her at that time also, but she could not, during graduation, wear her eagle feather in her cap. But when she was downtown doing the parade that they do every year, she was approached by one of the other students, and they had some kind of a chicken feather or something in their cap, and they said to her, "Well, I guess you're going to graduate a Redskin after all." She was so hurt that she didn't even want to go to graduation. We really had to talk to her to get her to go there, and she went, but it was very hard for her. So it's very important that we allow our children to be proud of who they are. And by allowing them to wear their own personal regalia or something that's been given to them by their families, you know, beating their cap, whatever, it lets that be instilled into them, the pride that they carry as Anishinaabe people, or Navajo or Cherokee. We have a lot of Native people in Michigan that aren't part of the 12 federally recognized tribes, but they're still Native. They still should have that right as Native people. And I think it would be very, very important to all these students to be able to express that. And it is part of the religion. For my children, you know, they go to ceremonies, they sweat, they powwow. They know who they are and where they come from, but they can't always express that without being ridiculed, and especially in our school system, unfortunately. So I appreciate all the work that's went into this by the caucus and the representatives that support it, and I think it's a very beneficial bill that would benefit all people, because it would bring awareness about Native American people, because believe it or not, a lot of people don't realize we exist. We're a thing of the past. They talk about us as a thing of the past, you know. So I would appreciate it if you would take this under consideration and pass these two bills. And I say, Chi-miigwech. Oh.
And thank you. And our final speaker, we have about 10 minutes left, so we do want to make sure we get to questions. So I believe our final speaker is Yvonne Moore.
Good morning. I hope you have a wonderful week. I'm 75, and I've dealt with some of you people many years ago. So I'm a social justice advocate, and my story starts at Central Michigan University. I had my 4-year-old and 6-year-old son at a football game. And at that football game, people showed up with full war bonnets, red face paintings, just horrible things, and my children were horrified. And at that moment, I made that decision in my life to make a difference at Central Michigan University. So I took on the task of getting rid of the mascots. We still have the Chippewa name, and that's because it's an agreement with the tribe. It's not, if you don't have the agreement with the tribe, you're not entitled. So I'm the eldest of 6. I'm the first person in my family to graduate from high school, to go on to college. I have 10 grandchildren and 2 great-grandchildren. I am a retired university professor, retired university department chair. And when I graduated, I was told, do not wear anything flamboyant for your graduation. So I just wore my moccasins. 6 weeks later, my son was graduating from high school. He showed up with his eagle feather, which Linda was part of seeing a ceremony here by Betty Pamp in Lansing, who was a leader for our people. The principal of the school came to him, and this was in 1900, and said, you can't graduate. And my son said, why? And he said, you can't have that feather. And so my son said, okay. Then, because my son is a good, humble man, the student body president stood behind him and then next to him and said, if he doesn't graduate, we don't graduate. We have all these cords, he's earned this. And sometimes people make decisions. The principal put his, I'm not gonna let this happen. He says, okay, then I'm calling the police. The next thing I know, the state police and the city police are there, and I get called out from the stadium because of what's happening. And at this time, graduation had been held up at least 45 minutes. And so things were getting tense. And it was sent to the superintendent that he wanted to graduate with this feather, and because there must have been 1,000 people there. So anyway, the superintendent told them, go ahead, let him. So with the student body and my son, he graduated. And then the superintendent came to me and he said, "What was the deal?" The way it was described to me, he was coming out with a war bonnet and it was going to be 2 feet behind him. I never even saw the feather. The thing that I really emphasized at that point, to let the school, and particularly the principal, I said, you should all be proud of yourselves. You have taught these students to be critical thinkers, and you've taught them to have values. So you need to be proud of this graduating class. And so that's my story. It goes to show that through this system, we have some really, really, really good people who are teaching our children to be critical thinkers and have values. And it's not easy to stand up, no matter who or what you are. And so that's my story and my son's story, and it started back in CMU, and I'm still a Native Justice Coalition advocate for Kayla, who was murdered at MMIW in Monroe County. So we have lots to do. And I worked with Angler for 2 years to get the books changed. It never happened, so I have a little bit of discouragement with government issues. Thank you very much. Have a great week.
Thank you for joining us and continuing to persevere in our system. I think that's all our speakers. Do we have any questions? Representative Pius.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was wondering if this bill applies to both secondary schools and higher education, college, university?
Sorry, Representative, can you go ahead?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was wondering if these bills apply to both secondary schools and colleges.
Representative?
Yes, my bill 4954 applies to K through 12. Mine does.
And Rep. Steckloff's bill does apply to universities and colleges as well as K-12.
Any further questions? All right. So I just want to say in closing, again, let me get it right, Chimgwich. Oh, do I have, yeah. Let me read in the cards and then I'll, Chimgwich. Okay. So not wishing to speak, supporting the bill, Cheryl Kennedy with, all right, got the right stack of cards. Not wishing to speak, supporting the bill is Dwayne Battle of Bay Mills Community College. Also not wishing to speak, supporting the bill, Whitney Gravel of Bay Mills Indian Community. Not wishing to speak, supporting the bill, Ramona Henry of the Native American Community. Also not wishing to speak, supporting the bill, Lisa Carlson with the LTBB Odawa Tribal Citizen. And also not wishing to speak but in support of the bill is Mary Morales, president of the Nokomis Cultural Heritage Center. So thank you for those. So Chimgwich to all of you for sharing your stories. And I just want to add a little personal experience of my own. Many of you know I'm a former educator. I taught high school for a good chunk of time, and part of that time in teaching high school was in a Catholic school, all girls, with a fairly large representation of Muslim students, which people thought was a little odd, but their parents wanted them in a single-sex education setting and were okay with the religious aspect. But in our school, we did actually create a prayer room for those students. And the intercultural exchange that was such a richness for us as an organization, as a community. Furthermore, I taught Spanish, and so having first, having that connection to Muslim students, if you're unaware, Spain was a Muslim-controlled country for about 800 years, just prior to the Catholic takeover. So rich history that was able to be shared in with that first-person connection to the culture. And it just brought such a level of understanding between our students, and again, to my particular subject area, that, I can't even, you can't put a price on that, right? The value of that. And so when I think of that and I think of this, it has a very similar feel to it. And I think this is something that is so simple that we can do that would just be incredibly powerful in so many ways and meaningful to, the Native American community here in the state of Michigan, and to begin to recognize our history here, and what we put them through, and, again, to just shine a light on the pride and honor and the history and culture of folks that we share our land with, or we share their land. So thank you all for bringing this forward and taking it into consideration. We will plan to vote on these bills next week. We do have some clarification that we'll get out to everyone. And so we will return to this matter briefly next week. I believe we have no absent members today. So with that, no further business before the committee. The committee will stand adjourned.